Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Scale for Retail, what's become now a Thursday fixture in the diary. And it's really lovely to see that we have so many people signed up to the webinar. But what would be really cool, because, you know, we're all sitting here staring at each other, and it's lovely to know what the audience is feeling out there. So please just say hello and where you're from today, like your city maybe, or your country if you're plugging in from somewhere extremely remote. And even people from China are welcome, obviously. So do just tell us where you're all from and who's here. Okay, so who do we have? Chris L from the Philippines. Welcome. I think you must be new. That's very, very good that we have some new people. Ray from Norfolk. Now that's
Norfolk,
a place.
My home county.
Yeah. Coventry. Welcome, Ben. Oh, wow. We've got Nemo from Köln in Germany. Oh, that's brilliant. And Alison in Leicester, not too far away from where I am right now. And Kaiser from Pakistan, and St. Albans, because that's where Christian is. And I should add, I'm in Stamford in Lincolnshire, which is a very, very beautiful county. And it's a picturesque place to work. Sometimes I even work in my garden. And actually, if anyone can tell me how to get a computer screen visible in the glaring sun, I'd really appreciate that. Because I haven't found
a jumper. You get a jumper. You put it over the laptop, but over your head, so just your head inside the jumper, and away you go.
Well, joking aside, I have tried putting my laptop in a box and looking and peering at it, you know, sitting outside under my umbrella, but that didn't really work. And Ron from Central London, looking to import accessories, and Tosin in Greenwich. Now, Greenwich is beautiful. That's really lovely. Cool. All right. So thank you very much, everyone, for giving us a feeling that we're all part of the community. And for those of you that are new, you know, that is the whole point behind Scale for Retail. Wherever you are in the world, or whatever room in the house that you happen to be working in, the whole point is that you can plug into a community and that we all help each other out, and that we get amazing speakers like Kian and Tosin this morning who help us and genuinely want to support the community and make sure that we all grow our businesses. So I'm not going to go on for too long, partly because I hate being repetitive and I hate other people who are repetitive. And we're going to have two presentations this morning. We've got Tosin representing Payoneer, and Payoneer have sponsored our meetups for quite some time now. We're very, very grateful to Payoneer. We've had a long-standing relationship, and the reason is because they provide Amazon sellers and e-commerce business owners with the facility to receive payments. So you can use their bank account facilities. You can use them actually to pay for all your VAT in all the other countries, which I find extremely useful. And there's more. And Tosin is going to take us through a very short presentation to introduce some of the newer features and what's going on with Payoneer. And then we're going on to the main stage, if you like, with Kian, who's going to take us through what's going on with COVID-19 in China, as well as some of his amazing, amazing knowledge and experience of sourcing in China. Okay, so Tosin, you ready? Christian, you ready? Because you're driving the presentation for him.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Cool. All right. Well, let me hand over to you two and take it away.
So good morning, everyone. So I'm Tosin, and I'm the head of sales at Payoneer in Europe. And like Shelley said, you know, very nicely earlier, we've been supporting Scale for Retail for a number of years now. It's a great relationship and bringing, you know, relevant Amazon sellers and SMBs to Payoneer, to our ecosystem. And we've had a great relationship for a number of years, and long may it continue. So today I wanted to talk about payments, what we specialize in, payments without borders. We've got a couple of extra features as well. I know some of you who've been here for a while may know about our working capital products. So that's another bit that I want to talk about today as well, specifically. Next slide, please, Christian. So yeah, so the challenges we've seen recently, I mean, COVID-19 has illustrated how vulnerable international supply chains can be to global stocks. And disruptions to the supply chains revealed the following to be extra important to our customers at the moment: staying in stock, keeping your stock. So I've spoken to a lot of people who, you know, they saw a massive upsurge initially while everyone's at home buying things online, and then they didn't have any stock and no way to actually get any more stock. So that's been a big problem. Pricing and the fluctuations in price, retaining a good service to your consumers even in the toughest times, it's so important. And it's the same thing applies for us at Payoneer. And product diversification. So if you were selling home barbecues right now, I guess you'd be, you know, or paddling pools. Like I've got one in my garden, fantastic. But I guess if you were selling maybe something along the lines of central heating or something that's not really so relevant right now, it's not something that you would win on right now if you're an Amazon seller. But all of these challenges are very closely linked to your supplier relationships. And during this pandemic, we've seen so many things that can put a strain on your supply chain. For instance, fulfillment options will collapse. Suppliers are asking for larger deposits for their own safeguarding, and that makes a lot of sense. Air freight is, you know, more expensive. Ocean freight has been less reliable. I know I've ordered a few things and I've been told in the small print that, hey, by the way, it's going to take a little bit longer to arrive. And certain products that we mentioned before are seeing exponential sales, while others are definitely struggling. Next slide, please, Christian. So, you know, when we talk about international payments and working capital tips for managing the supply chain risk and disruption, we have a capital product, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. But you can definitely seek alternative financing options to fill the short-term, you know, cash shortages. You know, you can have quick access to capital with competitive rates, and this can protect your stock levels and pricing in extreme times. I know myself and the other panelists were talking about this earlier, that even if you've got lots of cash now, you might find it quite tricky to get stock because everyone's trying to get it. But certainly if you do have good cash supplies, it puts you in a better situation to someone that doesn't. You can collect sales in local currency and local receiving accounts. So you can avoid, you know, paying huge fees from Amazon. They're typically around 4 to 4.5%. You can pay around 2% if you use one of Payoneer's local receiving accounts. And you can pay suppliers directly from the Payoneer account that we have. I know some of you are familiar with Payoneer and how we operate. So that's something. You can seek payment extensions and credit terms of your suppliers. And this is something that most of you, I hope, are doing, and the most prudent of you will definitely be doing. And it's something to ask for the same way many people are asking for mortgage holidays, the same way you can ask for payment extensions and better terms of your suppliers. And you want to maintain a strong relationship with them anyway, so it's a good thing to do. Ask to pay your supplier in local currency as and where you can. And this is definitely something Payoneer can help with, but this is something you should ask because, you know, currency is also seeing fluctuations, so it can help protect your business. If you can, and we've seen this with many of our customers, can you maybe have a backup supplier ideally in place? So we have many of our customers who have suppliers traditionally in China, a lot of them outsourced and had backups in Vietnam, for instance. And this is something that, you know, people should be looking to set up for future situations. Hopefully we won't have another pandemic of this sort in the future, but you never know. And margins may not be strong, but the cost of you know, running out of stock in this period is definitely greater. Don't spend too much time worrying about winning in the game of currency fluctuations. You are small to medium business owners, and your focus really, in my opinion, should be selling and generating revenue and looking at new products, not, or actually the pound's dropped against the dollar recently, or how much money can I make? I mean, I think you should focus on what, you know, you're super strong at, and you know, seek information if you can on the bits that you're not so strong at, and just try and focus your time where it's best, your resources where they're best spent. But remember, cash is king. The reason why Apple is seen as one of the most powerful companies in the world right now is because cash is king. And limiting your exposure to currency is far more effective when you try and receive and pay in the same currency. So yeah, do be mindful of that. Next slide, please, Christian. So with us, and going back to the basics of Payoneer, we have all the receiving accounts in those currencies that you can see there. And the great thing about that is, you know, if you're an Amazon seller or you're just a B2B company that receives internationally in different currencies, you can receive locally in each currency, which means it's like to like and it's for free. And then you can pay it back to your UK bank account or your account in Vietnam. I think we had someone from the Philippines today as well. You can pay it back there at a cheaper rate at 2% as a maximum versus 4% typical bank fees and Amazon fees. And every user has a unique set of virtual bank accounts. So this is something that is, you know, it's great in terms of receiving funds and paying funds out to your accounts. And we can actually link to payment gateways as well, and pretty much most marketplaces in the world. Next slide, thank you. So I did mention that before, that Amazon do have a 4% charge when you receive funds from them, and when it goes to your bank, and then you can then have to pay another up to 6% charge to then pay your supplier, whether they're in China or Vietnam, or, you know, wherever they are. So you could almost see yourself paying a double conversion up to 10% in the most extreme situations, and you've got to pay VAT as well. So all of this adds up, and you imagine, you know, for every 100K or 10K you make, losing 10% of that. I say losing, but, you know, it would feel like a loss, especially if there are other options out there. Next slide, please. So a bit about our capital advance. Now, we've spoken about our bank accounts and talking about our capital advance. So we actually have something specifically for Amazon sellers at the moment, and it allows you to get the working capital that you need today. We'll extend a new offer based on your store sales and collect 35% of your payments from that store until fully settled. So if you imagine you received, I like to say 100K because 100 is an easy number for percentages. So if you receive 100K a month typically from Amazon, or you receive it as a disbursement to your local bank account, every time you receive a disbursement, so if you're on Amazon.com, it's every 2 weeks, we'll take 35%. So we'll take 35K in month 1 and 35K in month 2, and just a bit less than 35K in month 3. So it typically would take you about 3 months to pay it back. You can actually accept a payment, a capital advance offer from Payoneer in a matter of minutes, because it's synced. So we get your MWS token, and we can see exactly what you're generating from the Amazon side, and we can give you an offer straight away. And the good thing about it is there's no personal guarantees and no credit checks. It's purely based on what you do on Amazon. So as long as you're in good standing with Amazon, you're in a good position to actually receive a capital advance from us. And you're all CEOs of your business. You know what you need to use the funds for. We don't have to tell you what to use the funds for. Everyone's in a different situation right now. So if you need to buy stock, or you need it for cash flow issues, you're free to do it. But the product is there to help customers who are on Amazon. Next slide, please. So we like to see ourselves, or we've worked towards having an end-to-end service for e-commerce sellers. So we've got the Payoneer Capital Advance, which I just mentioned to you. We give customers the ability to self-fund their account as well. So if you're only receiving, say, 5K from Amazon, and you actually need to send a supply payment out of 40 or 50K, you can actually self-fund your Payoneer account in pounds, for instance, in this case, and then pay out in USD or CNY to China. And that's something that we help our customers do. And just connecting with the e-commerce marketplace or payment gateway. So you can connect your account, you can bring funds into your account through the capital advance, through connecting to a payment gateway, or self-funding. And when these funds then go into your Payoneer account, you can then pay out. So it's whether you need to pay out VAT, or you can pay out through our prepaid MasterCard, which gives you a balance of up to 10K on a physical card and 100K on a virtual card. And then you can also make payments out to your local bank or someone else's Payoneer account, which is for free, or to a supplier as well. So it's the end-to-end. It's from one side where you put funds in to the other side where you pay funds out. And we like to think that we can do this for you at the best rate possible in the market. Next slide, please. And that's it. So literally, it's a short one for me today. Didn't want to spend 3 hours of your time dwelling on these things, but certainly if you need any more help or any more information, you can reach out to us at the details provided below. And thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to hearing and receiving any more questions and hearing more about what's going on today in the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Tosin. Did you see the question from Ron in the chat window? He's asking about the effective interest rate on a typical advance.
Yes, so good question, Ron. And the first thing I was going to say is there is no effective annual rate because it's a fixed fee and it's a flat fee. So going into the specifics of finance, and something that I've been in for the last 3 or 4 years, when something is a loan, it's got an annual rate and an APR. But if something is like a working revolving credit facility with a flat fee, like what we have now, there isn't an annual rate. But the flat fee is 3.5% at the moment. So it's a flat fee. So even if you take 100K, you take 10K, you take 2 million, it is a flat fee of 3.5%.
Okay, so you really do want to take 2 million.
Someone's taken 4 million from us before, Shelley. So I'm not sure, was it you? I'm not sure if it was you. Was it?
I have to say it was me.
She'd be in the Bahamas if it was.
Yeah.
She's probably in the Bahamas now, to be honest.
There's another question there as well from Kaiser. How many times can the credit facility be used?
So an unlimited time. So as long as you stay in good standing with Amazon, so your store is healthy and the funds are coming in, and you stay in good repayment history with us, it's revolving. So when you pay back 50%, we'll look at refreshing it again. So yes, it's unlimited. Every time you pay one back, you can take another one out. If you pay it back early because you're in a fortunate situation where your sales spike, fantastic. We'll give you a rebate of 50% of the flat fee that I talked about earlier on, and we'll reissue you another one.
Fantastic.
Cool. Very good. And I had a question. Is it possible to pay people who may work with us in the Philippines using, but in local currency, or not yet? Is that a feature?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can do. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to create a bank. I see loads of questions are coming in right now. I'll probably maybe easier so everyone gets a turn to talk. I'll write in the chat. But to answer your question, so yes, you can. And the best thing to do would be to set up an account for them. So set up a receiving account for them, a bank account, and then we call it pay outside the network, because it's outside the Payoneer network. If they have a Payoneer account, great. If they don't, then it would just be you'd create their bank account as one of your options of an account to pay into, and you can do that.
So they can create their own account. That's what.
Or if they create their own Payoneer account, it'd be even better.
Yes, my VA has a Payoneer account. I pay her
there you go.
from my balance to her Payoneer account, which is free for me. And then she pays a transaction to remove the money.
To remove it. Yeah, there you go.
Good.
Okay. I'll answer the questions in the chat then, so we can move on.
Okay.
Or do you want me to answer them? I don't mind.
Let's do a couple. Just
cool.
because the chat ones don't get onto the replay. Does Payoneer charge anything when you self-fund your Payoneer account?
Very, very good question. And if you think about the like-to-like situation, then no, we don't. So we have, don't want to go to customer details, but we have customers that fund quite high amounts. And the great thing about it, if it's pounds to pounds, or it's euros to euros, or dollars to dollars, no charge at all. So all of our charges are always on the way out, not on the way in.
Okay, cool.
Is it possible to get a loan for a startup or new business?
No, not with us at the moment, but yes, in the market there are plenty of alternative lenders that will do that. My previous company, Iwaka, was very big at doing that. So hard times right now, and I think we all know that banks are really limiting who they're lending to. I think if a bank typically would lend to 100 people right now, they tend to lend to about 10 people right now, for obvious reasons. So maybe not the best time, but certainly there's still lenders out there who are doing this and offering this facility.
Okay, and I think that's all. Oh, are you better offer than OFX?
Oh, good question. Okay, so good question. We're flexible. We can, depending on the volume. I think Christian and Shelley knows very, very well. Depending on the volume, we'll always make sure we're competitive. So for you, Goody, that you've come through this ScaleForEtail webinar, we will definitely be better than OFX for you specifically. So yes.
Yeah, so when you talk to your Payoneer, just mention you came from us, or we also have a special link you can use as a Payoneer member, which I'll put in the chat when I find the link in a few minutes.
Yeah, if
Okay, I
you
think
sign up using the link, then once you've placed a certain amount of money into your account, you get a cashback from Payoneer. So it's a special offer for the community. And I think it's £100, dollars, whatever, back when you've put in $1,000.
$1,000, yes.
Yeah, through your Amazon business, which actually shouldn't be that difficult. So it really
nice
is.
10% cashback. It's always always good.
It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Yeah, good that you specified you Amazon versus someone who puts in $1,000 of their own money, self-funded. Thank you very much for being specific there.
And also, just a quick one to kind of reassure everyone. There is card protection because I use the prepaid credit card to pay all my chicken shit subscriptions, everything I need to pay in US dollars. I love it. But there is card protection, isn't there?
Up to a point. So if you have issues, raise it with us. So if we have situations, for some reason this week, a lot of people have been paying the suppliers the wrong amount, probably because suppliers are now back online. So we've had to recall a few payments. So I wouldn't call it protection in terms of like, hey, if you made a purchase with American Express, it's fully protected if the goods are broken. But what I will say is if you do make a payment and it needs to be recalled for whatever reason, with Payoneer versus a traditional bank, you do have a strong chance of recalling those funds because we go due diligence and we'll take our time to send that payment anyway. So if it's going to take 5 business days, we'll probably send it on the 3rd business day to give you that little bit of leeway. So protection that way, yes.
No, I meant for the prepaid card, because most prepaid cards have 0 protection, but I actually experienced some fraud on the card last year. And
yes,
you
remember.
You protected me.
That's what I'm saying. So we'll protect you from that side, yes. From a fraud side, yes.
From a fraud perspective, yeah.
But
I don't even know how you got it.
But if it takes a bit longer, if you didn't realize it for a month, for instance, it's unlikely that we would be able to recover those funds from the other side and refund you. But certainly if it's something that you realize within 2 or 3 days, then we would definitely protect you from that side.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Okay, one last question for you, Tosin. From Monowa, can I use Payoneer as a payment processing company through my own website instead of Amazon? I think it's asking if it could be a card processing.
No, we don't do that, or like a payment gateway. No, we don't offer that service. You would still have to link Amazon and then use Payoneer to disperse the funds. So we don't currently have that offering at the moment, but pretty sure the powers that be are probably going to send us that way in the near future.
So they could use Amazon payments, right? And then use Payoneer to receive the money.
Use Payoneer to receive. Hang on.
Yep,
that's true. Or
looks like Shelley's got a business idea there. I can see your mind whirring there, Shelley.
No. Or Shopify. I mean, I've had
a
situation where I need a Shopify bank account in America and they're not accepting Payoneer. So do you know if that's on the cards at any point soon?
Yes, so we're not going to mirror Shopify that I know of. Obviously, I can't give away trade secrets that I know of, but I know that with Shopify Pay, they're really restricting that you have to pretty much use them and that's it. You're penalized for using anyone else or trying to use anyone else. But for many other Shopify stores, you can, but specifically in that situation there, you can't use Payoneer, unfortunately. But we do. Many of our customers are drop shippers or e-commerce merchants, so to speak, and they will use Shopify and connect to Payoneer, and they save a lot. They really do.
I had my thing off, so you had to.
No, it's fine. It's fine. That's what I'm here for, right? So.
Cool. Good. Well, thank you very much. It was very interesting, as it always is, to have a bit of a go around banking and funding and cards and loans. And it's obviously very, very topical to the conversation today, because Kian is going to now move on and talk to you about how you spend your money. How you go shopping in China.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, guys, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kian Golzari. I've been living and working in China for the past 10 years. And in that time, I've developed over 2,500 products, attended more than 20 CANTON fairs, and visited more than 500 factories. And the purpose of the presentation today is to give you as much actionable advice that you can apply to your businesses as well as keeping you up to date of what's happening right now in China during this COVID situation. So I'm just going to keep you guys right in the process. And yeah, let's get started with the show. Let me see if I can share my screen and start the presentation. Cool. So this is me. This is Kian Golzari. I just want to make sure everyone can see the slides and hear me okay. And, and we can, you can see it, yeah? Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. So let's get rolling. I'm just going to give you guys a quick intro and quick background into myself, so you can sort of get an idea and a context of what position I'm coming from. So some of the brands that I've worked with over the last 10 years has been both licenses like the NBA and the Olympics, as well as retailers in the UK and the US, as well as just specific big promotional companies as well. So a wide variety. And that's really allowed me to sort of understand the needs of plenty of different customers, and then being able to source in the best way for a wide variety, not being sort of like one dimensional. So we were the first family business to be awarded the Olympic license. And in 2012, when the Olympics came through London, my brother, who's the sales director of our company, got to run with the torch when it came through Scotland. So that was a really cool and special moment. And then here's a contract that we had with the United Nations. This was for 300,000 roll mats. And I show this because this is super important, and why we win these contracts is not only price and quality, but it's speed to market as well. And speed to market is so important for, you know, Amazon businesses as well. Like when you find an opportunity for a product and you need to get it out as fast as possible before everyone else, it's identifying how to do that as well, which I'm going to go into a little bit later on today. And as I mentioned, I also work for the NBA. So this is just an example of one of the products that we do for the NBA. It's a sport licensing brand. And we have these like layer play blankets that you can flip it over, and a child can basically go to sleep dreaming they are their favorite player. And we sort of did this to have like motivational messages behind our products as well. And Steph Curry, who's one of the players in the NBA, is actually a partner in our company as well. And he posts some of our products on social media. So whenever we drop like a new blanket or pillow, he posts it on his social, and we get a lot of engagement in that way as well. But it's very, very important to have a brand that inspires and a brand with a proper message that allows people like this to get behind it. So you always have to be thinking in your business, like, what am I trying to tell? Who are my customers? What message am I sharing? Just to get other influencers on board who also want to share your message and your purpose. So this was me in the factory, just kind of making the products prior to the NBA finals a couple of years ago. That was a lot of fun, and I'm going to go into shortly the importance of being able to make your own products. Neymar, Brazilian soccer player, he saw the products we were doing for the NBA. He got on board. We did a collection for him, and we did a really cool deal with him where you can see here on his Instagram, he's got 136 million followers. He actually posted our product as well, and in the bio it says, I love football, activedreamers.com. That's our website, and he drove a lot of traffic there as well. Which was really cool. And then this is me in China in the factory actually making the products as well, which I'm going to go into later on, and how important that is to really understanding your products and getting the best prices. So final thing I want to just say is, like, you know, proximity is power. Like, I moved to China in 2013. I lived there full time for 3 years. And then I'm back and forth every few months. And then I moved to the States last year just to really put myself, I always try to put myself in an environment where I can achieve the best results. I really wanted to get very, very good at manufacturing. So I moved to China and I was in factories every single day. Then I really wanted to work with the biggest brands in the world. So I put myself in a position where I can access those people and those brands. And it's a lot easier said than done to just say, hey, just go and move around the world. But if you're really serious about this business, and if you really are committed to what you want to achieve, put yourself in an environment where you're most likely to win, and good things will happen for you very fast. So this presentation is going to be all about sourcing from China, but we are in unprecedented times, and there's some really, really important things that we need to be aware of what's going on in the situation around the world. And so many people are talking about, you know, Corona and how that affects our sales and our products and our markets, but not many people are talking about how it affects our sourcing. So I just want to give you my top 10 tips of things you need to be mindful of during this time when you're placing orders and when you're sourcing products from China. So the first thing is that with your supplier research, you have to be more diligent than ever before, because with a lot of anyone who's like sourcing from Alibaba, like Alibaba, that's another topic in itself, but it's like a lot of middlemen appeared on the platform to benefit from the emergence of Amazon sellers. And now with a lot of people working from home and a lot of people learning and taking courses of how to sell online, well, now a lot of even more middlemen are appearing on Alibaba to try and capture some of those orders. So you have to be very, very diligent in your process, in your sourcing, to make sure you're buying from the right people from the get-go. And I'm going to keep you right in that process. Then also, like, whoever you're doing business with, whether it's an existing factory or a new factory, you also want to check their location. And first of all, reach out to make sure the supplier's okay. Check their proximity to Wuhan and just see if they were badly affected by the virus, because at the end of the day, people buy from people, and we have to make sure that the people that we're doing business with are okay first, and then we can start talking about business. And they very much appreciate that, and that's just one step into sort of building your supplier relationship. Then, we just had a great presentation from Tosin about payments. But I would just say, if you're making a payment for the first time, if you're doing it through Alibaba, make sure you select trade assurance. Or if you're doing a bank transfer, make sure you do a letter of credit. Or if you want to do it with a credit card, make sure you have payment protection. Just because if you don't educate yourself on who you're buying from, you might be paying these middlemen who are just looking to capture your order, take your money, and then disappear. And Alibaba doesn't necessarily protect you from that unless you select trade assurance. Now, if you have been buying from a factory for several years and you've built up a trust factor and you've met them before, you can probably just continue to do payments as normal. But it's very, very important to make sure that the category of product that they're manufacturing is okay in the current pandemic that we're in. And I'll explain why in a second. So you want to make sure the factory are still doing the same products that they were doing before the pandemic, because like, for example, I was doing travel bags and travel luggage. Well, now that market has completely disappeared. And what happens is that for those like travel bags, essentially there's a lot of sewing machines, it's a lot of manual labor, it's a lot of cut and sew. But hey, there's a global demand for masks at the moment, and there has been for the last 2 months, and we can't get enough of them. And that masks are also cut and sew. So a lot of my bag factories have reached out to me to say, hey, we're stopping doing bags at the moment and we're making masks. Do you want to buy some? So don't just assume that your factory is doing the same products that they were doing before COVID. They might have diversified into other products. So just make sure you check in with them to make sure that they are still producing the same products that they were before. And then, are there products in demand right now based on the global situation? So as I mentioned, the travel bag situation, if their global demand is down, well, one, they might not be hiring as many workers. The other thing is that their factory might be in trouble. Because remember, China have had 3 very big hits, right? End of last year, Trump massively put up the tariffs. And for travel bags, the import tariff from China to USA went up to 44%, which is massive. So their orders were greatly affected then. Then they had their Chinese New Year holiday in January, which is their low season where they aren't getting any orders and everything shuts down for a month. And then at that time, they got COVID. And during COVID was also a double whammy, because first of all, they got hit in China first, and then the rest of the world got hit. So like their factories shut down, and then the orders from the rest of the world. So like from really September up until now, certain factories have had massive hits. So you want to make sure that the factory is still fully operational in business. And that purely depends on the category of product that they're manufacturing. Because as you know, if they're doing like home office or home gym and stuff like that, then their business is thriving and booming, and they've got plenty of orders. But if it's certain categories which are not in demand, then the factory might be in trouble. So you just have to be very careful before making any payments that you check these sort of things. And then you want to know, like, can they still produce to the same capacity? Because as you know, this virus hit during Chinese New Year. And during Chinese New Year, like, it's the biggest people migration in the world. Over 110 million people travel at this time. And a lot of factory workers are not actually from the town of the factory. They migrate there to work, and then they go back to their hometown for Chinese New Year for a month. So because of all the travel restrictions, a lot of people didn't travel back to the factories that they're working at before. And then on top of that, they might not have been required to go back to the factory that they were working in, depending on the demand of that factory based on the global situation of COVID. So a factory which may have had 200 workers pre-COVID might just have 50 now. And then for that reason, if you were doing like 10,000 units a month, maybe they can't make that capacity for you anymore. So just before placing any big orders, you just want to make sure, maybe you want to do a trial order first to make sure everything goes smooth and make sure that you're still getting the same quality and the same lead times that you were before. And you might also want to consider using backup suppliers as well to sort of just give you maybe 2 or 3 alternatives, maybe send your samples to them, get it priced up. So if your orders do pick up and you need alternate manufacturers, then you've already done that work to basically pass it off to other factories quickly. And this is really interesting, right? So when Corona first broke out in like January and February in China, a lot of people just thought it was only going to stay in China and it wasn't going to spread to the rest of the world. So people on our side of the world start to get scared. They're like, okay, what if the factory's shut down? Let me just like rush in all my orders so I can get an order out quickly, so I'm not going to be out of stock. So people were rushing to place very big orders. And then Corona happened in the rest of the world, and then the demand fell, and then people rushed to cancel their orders. So a lot of factories that I've spoken to have basically held on to a lot of stock from big orders and then cancelled orders, and now they're just sitting on it. So depending on what your product is, like if it's just like something that doesn't, if it's a Me Too product and doesn't require much customization, well, the factory might be sitting on a lot of stock that they just want to get rid of. So you might want to reach out to them and say, hey, are you guys holding on to anything? Have you got any stock that you want to clear? Or it might not even be finished product, but it might be materials. They might have ordered 30,000 yards of a specific material that they use for your product for another customer, but then they cancel the order and they're just sitting on the materials and they're willing to get rid of it at a cut price. So just have that conversation with them to be like, did you have any canceled orders? Are you holding on to any stock? Do you have any clearance items? And you never know what you might get offered. And going back to the payment topic as well, now is a very good time to ask for credit on your orders if you have a pre-existing relationship with the factory, because I always say that working with China and working with factories is working in partnership. It's not just like you're my supplier and I'm your customer. It's like we're in this together. Like if I win, you win. So you can also say, look, based on the global situation, there's been a strain on my business. Like the demand has gone down slightly, but I need to keep ordering. Can you give me credit on this order for 3 months or 6 months and let me basically recapture the market share? And as a result, I'm going to stay in business, and then you're going to continue to get repeated orders. So you're not just saying, hey, give me credit. It's like, no, I need credit right now. So I need your support right now so that I can continue to give you orders later on down the line. And if you explain it that way, then and here's the thing, like this is why it's important to know if you're working with a trading company or a factory, because a factory is much more likely to issue you credit than a trading company. So that's why it's important to understand who you're doing business with. And then the other thing I would say is that don't rush to place large orders until you've checked the freight costs, because as you all know, the air freight costs have massively spiked like 4 or 5 times, and that's just due to a lack of commercial airlines in the air, which was predominantly used for our air freight. And also, sea freight has remained pretty steady, but prices have gradually gone up. And it's still okay to put containers on a vessel and ship them here. But remember, when you put 1,000 containers on a vessel and it arrives at the port in the UK or the USA, well, now you need a lot more truckers to come and disperse that. And you need people working in close proximity to unpack it and to put it in a warehouse. So that's been delayed as well. So that can cause a slight spike in prices as well for sea freight. So don't rush and be like, okay, I need to place 100,000 units right now, and then find out that your air freight costs or your sea freight costs have gone up like 3 or 4 times, and then it's not a profitable item for you. So just make sure you get those quotes before selecting any big orders. And the final thing I was going to say is at the Canton Fair. Now this is huge. This is the largest import-export fair in the world. It's something I don't miss, and I was supposed to be there last month, and I've been to the last 20 of them for the last 10 years. So this is for the first time it's going online, and this is a massive opportunity for anyone, because Alibaba is like the foundational place where people start for finding suppliers, but the best suppliers in the world don't even list their products on Alibaba, because Alibaba is essentially just a platform for people who need sales. That's why they advertise, and that's why they pay the platform to receive orders. But the best factories in the world are so good at what they do that they don't need to advertise their services because their production lines are always full. And those are the factories that tend to attend the Canton Fair. But so of the 1,000, 2,000, however many Amazon sellers there are, they go to the Canton Fair. They always had the advantage to see the latest products and to see the real factories and meet them face to face and build that relationship. But now it's a level playing field. So it's so important that you take advantage of this online Canton Fair, which starts on the 15th of June. And I'm going to keep you right. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. So one thing I wanted to touch on real quick is product development. And this is my family business, Highlander. This is how I got started. It was camping and outdoor products, and I was developing all these different items. And I just decided, hey, I want to make the best outdoor rucksack that ever existed. Something very, very large. It's capable that you can take climbing, and it's capable of climbing Mount Everest. And it got picked up and reviewed by Trail Magazine. And the cool thing about this, I don't know if you can see it because it's quite small, but on the far left, our retail price is £115, and the market leader Deuter on the right is £200. So they're almost double the price. And everything in between, if you look at the bottom, our score is 4.2 out of 5, but other guys are 3.8, 4.0, 3.6, 3.4. So they're almost double the price, but less quality. And my point here is that when you're developing products, don't just assume that, hey, the most expensive is the highest quality. If you really understand how to develop products, you understand the features that your customer want, if you understand pricing, materials, and workforces and factories and things like that, then you can really get the best possible price at the best from the best possible factories. But you really have to understand that process. And I'm going to talk about that slightly just now. I mean, specification sheets are super important in this process. If you don't have a spec sheet, it's very important that you get one right now. Whether you create it yourself, A spec sheet should basically have every single detail or information about your product that you could give to a 5-year-old, and they should be able to understand what your product is. A spec sheet is basically like an SOP that you want to basically give it to someone and they fully understand what's in that product. What's the dimensions, what's the materials, what are the colors, what are the Pantone references, what's the capacity of it, the logos, everything. And this is just like one tab of it that you have like illustrations, so you really understand what it is. And the value of having a specification sheet like this is that you should be able to send it out to multiple different suppliers with exactly the details that you want. And then everyone can quote you accurately. Because the difference is if you don't have one of these, and then you're contacting suppliers and and you're looking at, I don't know, bags or furniture chairs, and you're saying, hey, what's the price of that? What's the price of that? What's the price of that? And you start to get these prices in $7, $8, $9. But you're not really comparing them like for like, because they're just quoting you on what they're offering on their website. Like some of them might be polyester fabric, some of them might be nylon fabric. But if you've specified exactly what you want and you share that with the suppliers, and then you educate yourself on what is the market price, then you can then achieve the best price. So this is very, very important for you and your business moving forward. And hey, if you don't know how to create one of these spec sheets, you can get the factory to do it for you. Once you find what's the product, what you want, just contact the factory and say, hey, can you send me your full specification sheet for this item? And say that to many different factories, and you'll start to get all these like specification sheets back, and then just tweak it, like delete their company logo from the top, add your company name, add your logo onto the product, change the dimensions if the dimensions weren't right, just write polyester instead of nylon if you want to change the material. Then once you have what you want, PDF it so it's not editable, and then just send it to the different factories, and then you'll start to get your pricing back. Product usage is also so important in developing products as well. So this is the Camping and Outdoor brand, and whatever product I was developing, I was testing it myself. And I see far too many sellers basically buying from one website and selling on another, buying from Alibaba and selling on Amazon, but they're not actually using, feeling, touching, and testing the products themselves. And that's really where products, like, that's where you get negative reviews, because you're going to be the toughest critic of your product. So whatever it is, even if it's something as simple as a coffee mug, we'll fill it up with hot water 5 times to make sure like the handle doesn't melt. You know, you have to check these things yourself. So I think there's 3 people you have to check it with. You have to test it yourself. You also have to get it tested by a third party, like an Intertech or an SGS. You want to see if it's like, if it should be tested to industry and legal standards. And then you also want to consider, depending on what your brand strategy is, to even get it tested by influencers, because if you want to use any influencers to help promote your product, well, you want them to be involved in the process as well. And you want them to feel like, hey, this company actually reached out to me and they wanted me to be involved in making this product. So I now feel a part of it. So I'm going to feel happy promoting it. So just think about those 3 things. Test it yourself, test it with a third party to get your certificates, and then also test it with an influencer as part of your sales strategy. And then here's just some other pictures from Scotland. I was just taking a new backpack I developed out for a little hike, and then managed to get some cool photos from it as well. And then this is Veltra travel bag, which I'm going to be launching next year. And I was testing it myself in the hot climates in the deserts in Dubai, and then I was also snowboarding with the same bag in the Dolomites in Italy. So I know personally it can withstand really hot temperatures and it can withstand really cool temperatures, and the buckles didn't break, the zips didn't break. So I know that myself. So if I ever get a review from a customer to say, oh, hey, the zipper snapped, I'll be like, well, actually, you know, so this is it really helps you understand fully how your products are made and what's the levels of it, but you have to test it yourself. In terms of like product selection, one thing I wanted to go over, right? I kind of go by this model, which I created called the 365 model, which is essentially your 365 days in the year. And let's say, for example, right, I'm a camping and outdoor brand. Your 5-day products or your 5-day activities, like what is it? If you're a camping and outdoor enthusiast, 5 days in the year, you're going to be on top of a mountain, right? So if you like hiking, you're 5 days out of 365, you're going to be on top of Mount Everest. And what product do you need for that? Well, it's this particular bag. And your 60-day products are like your weekend products, like your Saturday and Sunday products, which is like your outdoor furniture chairs. This is what you use in your garden. You sit outside, you get suntan. And then your 300-day products are your Monday to Friday products. What do you use when you're going to work? And this is like an outdoor waterproof. This is something that you put in your car, that you put in your bag. It's something that's just going to keep you dry if it's going to be rain, because it rains a lot in the UK where we're from. So, and why I say this is that the 300-day products are by far the best seller in your range. Like this is like the 300-day products outsell the 5-day products like 100 to 1. But you need the 5-day products in your range to be able to sell the 300-day products. And this is more like aspirational marketing. The best example I can give is like the North Face. If you go into any North Face store, you'll see a big poster of a guy jumping out of a helicopter and snowboarding down a mountain. and people like that lifestyle, they associate with that lifestyle. But 99% of the products that they actually sell are t-shirts and hoodies, and they wear those t-shirts and hoodies because they want to be associated with the brand which does these extreme activities. And it's the same with these like outdoor waterproof jackets. They want the brand on it that's capable of climbing Mount Everest because they want to feel associated to that. So what that means for you guys is whatever products that you're doing, whatever products you have in your brand and in your range, even if it's a break-even product, have some products on your website which position you as the elite brand for your category. So when it comes to like the Me Too products, well, people feel more comfortable buying from your brand because they know you're more capable of manufacturing the high level products within your category. So you're more trusted manufacturer, if you know what I mean. So that's just basically my 365 model. Okay, let's get into some more China stuff, right? This is one of my favorite photos. This is Shanghai 1990 versus 2010. This is 20 years of difference. What was once grassland is now one of the biggest financial centers in the world. And why I like to show this is just to show like the rate of growth and the rate of change which goes on in China. And this is something we need to be very much aware of. And it's like when I lived in Shanghai, I was like immersed in that growth. Every time I like went back every few months, like there was like a new airport that wasn't there before. There was a new high-speed railway that wasn't there before. There was new 5-star hotels that weren't there before. And when you live in that environment and you see this constant growth, that then gets immersed in yourself as well. So China is changing rapidly. So is the way they do business. The same way with like Amazon as well. The algorithms keep updating and you need to be on top of that. So you also need to be on top of what's going on in China as well. Exchange rates, we guys, one of the best things I want to talk about was exchange rates in terms of changes going on in China. And, Tosin touched on this earlier, and it's a super valuable point. And this is something that I've greatly profited from as well. So if there's one thing you take away from this presentation, this is something you definitely have to do for your manufacturers, right? And this can save you money immediately. If you look at the exchange rate, right, $1 was 6.25 RMB in May 2018, right? Then in November, $1 was 6.95 RMB. So there's a difference of 0.7, which is a difference of more than 10%. So what that means is if you paid your supplier $100,000 for a purchase order in May, and then you paid them $100,000 for a purchase order in November, they've benefited 10% based on the exchange rate alone. So they've made an extra $10,000 just because the exchange rate has gone in their favor. Now, if you use this website, it's called xe.com, you're showing that you understand exchange rates and you understand that they've profited. And what you want to say to them is, hey, I know you've made an extra $10,000 or an extra 10% based on my purchase order here, my purchase order there. But what I need you to do is I need you to share that saving with me, because what I'm going to do is if we can split that saving, I'm going to reduce the cost of my products and I'm going to give a lower cost item to my customers and I'm going to get more sales, and more sales for me is more orders for you. So it's not just saying, hey, give me some more money and I'm going to put margin in my pocket. It's like, no, saying, I understand the exchange rates. Here's a chart. I can see where you've made more money. Pass that on to me and you're going to get more orders as a result of it. And then that's all what I'm talking about in terms of like working in partnership. So this website XE, and I'm sure Payoneer have got some great services for helping you guys identify this as well. And 70,000 RMB was just the difference on a $100,000 PO, which is over $10,000. So you can just basically type in what was the difference and it will give you an accurate amount, screenshot it, send it to your suppliers, and get discounts on your next orders. The one thing I'll say though is that the best time to ask for this is right before you give the payment, because if you discuss this with your manufacturer during the production process, well, they're going to find ways to increase the price of the order, to be like, hey, raw material prices have gone up, so we're going to have to charge you more. They're going to try and eat that a little bit. So when the goods are finished and when you're just about to ship and when you're actually going to pay your supplier, then bring this up, because they're just wanting to get paid and then they can't make any excuses. So that's definitely the best time to ask. So I kind of say, like, okay, if you're sourcing from China, there's 3 stages to this. There's beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And the beginner is like your Alibaba level, right? And I could do an entire presentation on the right way to source products from Alibaba, because it is a very, very, a platform with like mixed signals. You really have to be able to navigate it properly. Now, last week, I just started my own YouTube channel, and the first topic I wanted to discuss was how to source correctly from Alibaba, how to filter out all the middlemen suppliers and get straight to the real suppliers. And what I did was I created this YouTube video called 7 Alibaba Sourcing Hacks. And I don't know if you want to take a picture of this on your phone, but if you research this on YouTube, either type in Sourcing with Kian on YouTube or type in 7 Alibaba Sourcing Hacks on YouTube, you'll come across this video, and it's got my 7 tips, which I've put behind this screenshot because doing this slide would take me about 10-15 minutes. So I want to just say, screenshot this, go watch that video, and then we can use this presentation time to go over other topics as well now that I've made that video. So I always go by a phrase of what got us here won't get us there, which is like with anything in business, we always have to level up. And I feel that there's a lot of suppliers, there's a lot of sellers, Amazon sellers, which have outgrown their supplier. You know, they got their first supplier on Alibaba and they've outgrown them. Like they're starting to place bigger orders. Now they should be getting better prices. They should be working with bigger factories, but they don't necessarily know how. So the next stage in your business really has to be going to the Canton Fair. And the Canton Fair is the biggest import exhibition in the world, and it happens twice a year over 3 phases. There's every category of product you can imagine. There's over 26,000 exhibitors. I've been so many times, and it's so important to meet your your suppliers face to face. But as I said before, at the top of the presentation, was that now it's going to be virtual, and this is an advantage for everyone. And I'm going to be making a YouTube video on this as well, on the Sourcing with Kian channel, about how to navigate the fair. But I just wanted to give you some quick tips on how to find the best suppliers and the best products when going around and navigating this online virtual fair. And actually, the cool thing, some information I got so far, is that for this virtual fair, there's going to be photos, videos, there's going to be 3D renderings, and there's also going to be virtual reality as well. So you're going to be able to go into booths and see them in a VR, while like not being present there, but being able to see it for real. And then you can also schedule calls with booths, with exhibitors as well. So if you see a particular supplier that you like, you can get on the phone, you can do a one-to-one video recording, you can probably touch and feel the products. So that's going to be super interesting. Now, a lot of people don't really know where to start. Like they see like the online fair, or they see the physical Canton Fair, and they just get overwhelmed. They see all these different suppliers, there's thousands of them, and they're like, well, where do I start? What questions do I ask? How do I find out who are the good suppliers? And here, my friend Mr. Trump is telling us, here are the questions we should be asking. First, I always like to start with, are you a trading company or are you a factory? And this is like, there's no right or wrong answer, but it's just very important for you to understand who you're doing business with. Trading companies can provide sometimes a service which factories can't. Like if you don't like dealing with China and you just want to deal with one company, then perhaps a trading company is more suited to you, because a trading company has access to loads of different factories and you're just dealing with one company and they go and talk to different factories on your behalf. Whereas if you talk to the factory directly, you might have to talk to 5 or 6 different factories, depending on what it is you're trying to source and how many different products you're trying to source. And then also some factories have to go through a trading company because they don't have an export license. So there's no right or wrong answer, but you just really want to understand and know who you're doing business with as well. Because as I said at the beginning as well, a factory is much more likely to offer you credit. Then you want to know, where's your factory located? Are the office and the factory located together? And which port do you ship from? And this is very important because, well, when I visit China, I go to visit the factory and sometimes they give me the office address, but then I find out that the factory is 4 hours away. So you just have to make yourself aware. And on Alibaba, sometimes they give you an office address and sometimes they give you a factory address, and that can be confusing whether they're a factory or a trading company. So you always want to clarify that. And why you want to know which port they ship from? Well, if you're doing multiple different products from multiple different suppliers, if they were all shipping out of the same port and you didn't know that, well, you could benefit with your shipping costs, because rather than filling full containers to benefit on shipping costs, well, you could actually just split the container with like half the container from one supplier and half the container from another supplier and consolidate that and ship it out together. But once you can also time your orders in a way that the goods will be manufactured and ready and finished at the same time so that they can ship out together. But it's very important for you to get a map of China, see where your suppliers are, see which ports that they ship from, and check the proximity to each other. And you might be better off shipping products from the same port. And then you want to kind of know, like, how many workers do you have in your factory? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. I've worked with factories which have got 50 workers in their factory, and I've worked with factories which have got 2,000 workers in their factory. And there's different pros and cons of each. A factory which has got 2,000 workers, well, they might have much better systems. They might be much more faster at producing items, maybe much more scalable. But one with like maybe 50 workers are a lot more accommodating to your needs. They can give you a much lower MOQ. They'll let you trial different colors. They'll let you hold stock in their factory. So just understand where you're at in your business, and then understand which sort of factory that you align with. And then you want to know, like, how many units can you produce per month, and what's your MOQ? The MOQ, for those who don't know, is the minimum order quantity. And you always want them to explain that, because quite often you might have an idea for a product and say, what's the MOQ? And they say, oh, 2,000 pieces. And you're like, oh, that's far too much. I just want to trial like 500. But you always want them to explain, why is the MOQ that amount? Because they might say, well, hey, you wanted this custom floral pattern, and for that we have to prepare this special material, and the minimum yardage is like 2,000 yards, so 2,000 pieces. But you didn't know if you just took the red fabric that they had in stock, that you could have had like 300 pieces. So just always ask them to explain, why is the MOQ the level that it is. And then you also want to know, like, which markets do you supply, which countries do you supply, which brands do you supply, who's your biggest customer, because you basically want to know where's their attention going, because like different countries have different standards. Like if they're manufacturing for the US market or Western Europe, and that's also your market, well, you know that they can hit the standards, the testing certificates that we require for our markets. Whereas if they're more focused on South America or maybe the African market, which don't require testing, well, you don't necessarily know that they're not using chemicals which aren't restricted in our countries. Or if they're making for the Japanese and the Korean market, maybe they focus really on high quality and less on offering you good pricing. So just knowing who they supply, which customers, you can sort of paint a picture in your head of what they're capable of, and then you can go and research those brands that they supply and make sure that you're happy with those as well. One of my favorite questions to ask is, have you supplied any big retailers or department stores? And the reason for this is that if they've supplied a retailer like a Target or a Walmart or a Bed Bath & Beyond in America, well, that means that if they've supplied one of those customers, then they've basically engineered the product down to the lowest possible price it can be. So you can then ask them, well, what did you make for Target? What was the quantity? What was the price? And then obviously you can't ask this in your initial interaction, but if you have rapport with the factory and if you've placed several orders with them, you can say, hey, look, let me know next time Walmart are placing an order to you. And if they're placing 100,000 pieces of this, well, I'll also place my order at the same time. And you're not going to copy their product, but you might incorporate some of the materials that they use in their product into your product. So if they're ordering 100,000, yards of this blue material, but it's also the same fabric that you use on your products, well, now you can place your order and piggyback off their economies of scale. So you're going to, and if you have a good relationship with your factory, they're going to, add your order onto the back of that. And the other thing is that like all these big retail stores also require very, very strict testing in their factories as well. So you know that factory is compliant with the highest standards if they're capable of making for these big retail stores and department stores as well. But then you want to know, like, do you supply any brands selling on Amazon, and do you sell on Amazon? And again, there's not a right or a wrong answer, but it's good for you to understand, because if they're supplying other Amazon brands, well, then they know about, okay, what are the labeling requirements, how fast we need our orders, like how there can't be any quality defects. If you get a bad batch of production, that will affect your sales and your ranking, and then you might not be able to come back and place larger orders. So if they understand that process, that's good for you. And also if they're not supplying anyone on Amazon, then that's also good, because they're not supplying your competition either. So you just kind of want to understand that process as well. I've got a few more questions here as well, and I put this thumbnail at the bottom because again, I made a video about this on YouTube. So if you want to watch this in more detail, just type that into YouTube, sourcing with Kian, or 10 questions you must ask your suppliers, and you can watch the video as well. So you also want to know, like, has your factory completed any third-party audits, which is basically like the quality levels of your factory. And that's more important if you want to get your products into retail stores and department stores, because you know that you're sourcing from an ethical factory, and you know that they have good standards in place. And that's the sort of things like, okay, do they have enough fire extinguishers in the factory, that they don't have like unpaid overtime, that there's no child labor, that they have adequate lighting, that the dormitories are nice, that they have a food hall. All these sort of things go into third-party audits. And it's very interesting for you to read these documents and know what factories you're actually doing business with. And then you want to know, like, okay, which products do you really specialize in, and what is your strongest item? Because quite often for the Canton Fair, they put a lot of different items in their booth to capture your attention, because they want you to come in and they want you to be attracted to many different products. But a lot of those products they don't actually specialize in. It's kind of like the 80-20 rule. Like 80% of their attention just goes to 20% of the products. So you want to just really ask them, what's your strongest item? What's your core item? What do you specialize in? Because that's where they have their main strengths. But you might have seen a different product, which they might even outsource, or it might be their friend's factory. So just really find out what are their core strengths. And then I like to ask, like, what new products have you been working on? Because we pride ourselves on developing products. We develop products all the time, but so do the factories, because the factories also want to get new orders. And they don't show these products that they're working on front and center. You see it when you go to the factory. And that's why I visit so many factories, to see the latest products. And they also have them at the Canton Fair, but they have them hidden in the back. So now is a good time that if you have built up a bit of rapport and a bit of relationship, just ask them, what products have you been working on for next year? Is there anything new you can show me? And then can I get exclusivity on any of these products? Well, yeah, that was my next one. And can I get exclusivity? And maybe exclusivity could mean for 3 months, for 6 months, for 9 months, for a year. That could mean like, hey, if I don't order 10,000 units within 6 months, then you can open up to the rest of the market, but I want to be exclusive for this. And then that way you can kind of safeguard yourself that your competition won't also be doing the same products as you. And I also like to ask, when would be the best time to visit your factory? And even if you don't plan on visiting your factory, you should still ask when's a good time, because that's showing your seriousness, because they very much value you going to their place of business. And when you say that, like, hey, when's a good time to come and visit? Well, now they're like, well, we better take this guy seriously because he just asked us all these questions, and he asked us about, like, how many workers have we got in the factory? And if we told him we've got 200 workers and he comes and sees we've only got 50, then he's not going to trust us. So that's like, when you say that, they're also going to ensure that everything they tell you is the truth as well. And then, as mentioned before about the specification sheet, you want to say, can you email me a full specification sheet of all the items that we discussed by the end of the fair? Because it's easy for them to forget, because they get a lot of inquiries every day, whether it's at Alibaba or at the fair. And like, you are one of 100 customers that they've talked to that week. So you want to make it very, very clear and specific. I need the specification sheet by the end of the week. Otherwise, you might get forgotten about. And then you also want to ask for photos of the factory and a PDF of their company and their presentation and things like that. As much information you can gather about the factory as possible would be great. And then that's also how you identify, who's a trading company and who's a factory. Because when you talk to enough factories and they send you the PDF presentation and you see some of the photos are the same in different presentations, and you know that some of these guys are actually working together. So that's kind of like the Canton Fair questions. And as I said, you can watch that on YouTube as well under the Sourcing with Kian channel. Now, I want to touch briefly on price, because a lot of people always ask me, right, well, cool, I know how to find the right factories now, I know how to do the right products, but how do I get the best price? And let me just go through a little list real quick. I say imitate and innovate. And that's kind of like, if you look at the products that the factories are already doing, kind of like how I gave with the Walmart example, well, the workers are already like focused, and they've already made these products before. They've been trained, they've gone through all the teething processes, and like they've gone through the development process, so they're now specialized in making this product. And then now, if you're like, hey, well, let's just change the material, let's change it to a different color, let's increase the dimensions a little bit, let's add this like waterproof cover onto it, whatever, just make some small changes, innovate on top of what they already have, then you can get the best price of what it really is. And compare that to just going to a factory for the first time and say, hey, I've got this idea for a product, it should be this size, I want this like this and I want that like that. Well, now they have to get their team out and they have to make paper patterns, they have to test it, they have to sample it, they have to send it to you, you have to approve it. And that's a teething process, and that takes a long time, and it also can be quite expensive as well. And they're going to charge you for that, and they're going to put that into their unit cost. But try and take a concept that already works for them and innovate on top of it, and then you'll get the best priced items. And as I said before, you want to get the full specification sheet. You want to compare apples with apples. And that was when you complete your specification sheet, you want to send that out to as many different suppliers as possible. And then you can get the real price, and you can educate yourself on what's the market price for your product, rather than, without having the specification sheet, getting prices in from different people and just going for the cheapest one. Well, you went for the cheapest price because you got the cheapest quality, and you didn't actually do a like for like comparison. And then what I really like to do is, why I always get the best prices, I like to work in partnership. I like to work in the long term with my suppliers. I like to stress this as well, because it's not just like, hey, they hate like the one and done customers. Like a customer places an order one time and then basically goes away and places like another order to another factory like 6 months later because you saved them like 20 cents. You want to say, hey, like, we're in this together. We're going to be working together for the long term. We want to build this business together. I'm going to build up my brand. I'm going to get more sales. I'm going to get more orders. I'm going to pass those orders to you. So I need your support. And that's when I said, about like asking for credit. When you have these conversations about we're working together here, they're a lot more likely to give you, favorable terms. And, we're not really able to go out to China at this moment. So a lot of people say, well, how do I build this relationship if I can't go to China? Well, WeChat is a Chinese app. And like when you're on talking to them either by email or by Alibaba, try and take some communication to WeChat, not like the price quotations and stuff like that, but just have general formal conversations like, hey, if you went, I don't know, to the park with your kids, or if you went to whatever, a soccer game or whatever it is, just take photos of that and share it with your supplier and be like, hey, this is what I did on the weekend. Hey, this is when we had our friends around. And you want to make them feel like, you guys are building a real friendship here. So in that way, they're more likely to give you a much better service because they treat their friends better, if you know what I mean, rather than just the customer who inquires on Alibaba and says, hey, give me a price for this. And then you've got someone else who's like, oh, this is what I did with my family on the weekend. It's a lot different, and it makes business a lot more fun as well. Also, if you're selling internationally, make them aware, because like, at the end of last year, we had the Trump tariffs. So a lot of orders were affected of goods going from USA to China, from China to USA. But if you're also supplying Spain, Japan, Germany, countries which weren't affected by these tariffs, well, then make them aware of that and just say, hey, look, we also supply other retailers, we supply other markets around the world. So they're more likely to support you because they know your business is okay. But if you're only supplying the USA, and then you get hit with the tariffs and your business is in trouble, then they can't really offer you any support. So definitely make them aware of any other like avenues you're selling as well. And I would also like to add, like, choose your partner wisely, because some of my suppliers I've been working with for over 10 years, and some of them are my best friends. I've attended their weddings. They've come over to Scotland to hang out with me. Like, I've met them in LA. We go on a holiday together. We just have fun. I mean, it's like this business is like it's a long-term thing. And if you're going to be speaking to a supplier quite regularly, like every day or every week or every month, it's better that someone you get along with. So when I say that, like, when you get these specification sheets and you get these prices, try and choose the partner that you align with the most, that understands your vision for your company, and that you actually have fun talking to as well, because you're going to spend a lot of hours and a lot of late nights talking to these people. So better it's someone that you actually like. Don't go too hard on pricing, because in China you can get any price that you want. They'll give you any price that you want, but for that price that they gave you to get your order, well, they're going to take shortcuts. So don't negotiate too hard. Just educate yourself on what is the market price by using the specification sheet. And if you find that, like, okay, the prices are coming back $9, $9.10, $9.20, it's around $9 is the price you should be paying for that product. But if someone goes and offers you $7, then there's a catch. So just educate yourself, and then don't go too hard by pushing the price down too low. Upsell quantity is something I like to add as well, where it's like, let's say you ask for the price of like 1,000, 5,000, and 10,000 pieces. Well, 1,000 was the MOQ, so you're definitely hitting the MOQ, right? And then if you see the price for 10,000 pieces, that's the price, that's the lowest that they're willing to go. And what I like to say is, if it's a new product, I'll say, hey, what I need you to do is I need you to support me, and I need you to give me the price that you said for $10,000, but I'm only going to order 1,000 pieces. Sorry, for a price for 10,000 pieces, but I'm only going to order 1,000 pieces. And I do that because I'm only trialing this new item. But for me to make a dent in the market, and for me to basically really generate revenue for this product, and then really build myself up, I need your best price. And if I can get your best price, then I'm going to get a lot of orders, and then those bigger orders are going to come back to you. And then I hope that by my next order, or by the end of the year, you will get an order for 10,000 pieces. So you're kind of dangling the carrot to them to say, hey, if you give me your best price, I'm going to come back with bigger orders. And you know what their best price is, because they just told you, and you did hit the MOQ as well. So just ask for that price breakdown, and then see how far you can push it. And then also say, like, explain who your customers are, and then ask for credit, because, like, Amazon pays you whatever, like every 2 weeks at the end of the month, whatever it is. And sometimes you might need to ask them, hey, I need credit, I need support, because if I can get credit from you, I can order more units, and I can scale faster, and then you're going to get bigger orders in the long term. Or, I work with a lot of retailers in the UK as well, and some of the guys like Tesco require like 90 days credit. But if you pay your manufacturer 2 months before the goods ship, like your initial deposit, and you get paid by your customer 3 months after they're delivered, well, there's like a 5-month gap from when you pay your supplier to when you get paid by your customer. And you have to know if you're financially like ready to absorb that type of business model. And the suppliers can support you, because you can say, hey, look, I'm going to get this order for 50,000 pieces from Tesco, but if you want this order, if you want me to manufacture it with you, well, I need your support as well to loan me credit to finance this order as well, because we're both in this together. It's a partnership. So explain who your customers are, and then they're more likely to give you credit. And then, as I said at the top of the show, about asking what materials they have in stock, because there was a lot of canceled orders as well. And then also I mentioned about the exchange rate example as well. You can also use that to get a better price on your next orders as well. And then finally, visit the factory and really understand how products are made, and then that's how you can manufacture even better products at lower prices. And then I said, there was 3 stages to China. There was beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Your beginner was your online platforms, your intermediate was your Canton Fair, and your advanced is going to the factory directly. And I also had a full list of things to talk about for the factory, but I just want to give you a couple of examples. And my favorite thing to do is make one item myself. So I was loading my travel backpack into this machine, which basically chucks the bag up and down, and we put 40 kilos worth of weights into the bag. And then it just got jolted up and down 200 times. And that's testing the strength of the shoulder straps, that the shoulder straps can absorb that much weight and bouncing around, and they're not going to break. And then, like, being able to test that and make it. And then I told them, look, I have to make every single item myself. So I sat on the sewing machine and I constructed this bag together piece by piece. And I love doing this because, like, before I ever went into a factory, I just saw a bag in a store as like one unit. But when I went into a factory, I saw it in 30 different pieces. I saw the shoulder straps, the foam that goes on the shoulder straps, the zippers, the pullers, the webbing, the buckles, the coating, everything, the lining. And I'm like, well, I didn't realize that they had all these like processes to make one product. And now if you've got like a $15 item and you need to get it down to a $12 item, now you've got 30 different calculations you can make in your head of how this bag was actually put together. And you're like, well, hey, maybe I don't need that thickness of foam in the shoulder straps, or maybe I can go for these like slightly cheaper zipper pullers, which are still serve the same purpose, but they're not going to cost me as much. And you can make these, ideas in your head. And same way it goes like the other way. If you have a $15 product and you want to increase your quality and you want to get a $20 product, well, you know what you need to improve as well, because you saw it step by step. And then when you're in the factory as well, you can see all the materials that they have at their disposal. You can see, and materials are improving all the time. You know, right now this very hot topic is recycled PET material, which is like melting down the plastics from the ocean, turning that into polyester. And then we now use those materials on our bags as well, which is a great selling feature. And that allows you to align with certain influencers and brands and markets as well. So you see that when you're in the factory, but if you never saw that, if you never went into the factory and you just sort of inquired on Alibaba, you don't even know that these things existed. So that's why it's so important to go inside of the factory. And another thing, like, you know, we were doing these pillows for the NBA and for Neymar. And when I was in the factory, I saw a box that just said eye masks. And I was like, I didn't know you guys do eye masks. They're like, yeah. So I pulled out this gray eye mask, I put it over the pillow, and I was like, make me an eye mask of the player's eyes. And he sampled it up there and there. He just printed it and he made it, and that became our next product. But I never would have known that he was capable of doing that unless I was in the factory and I saw those boxes. So it really, really opens your mind when you go into a factory and you can see these sort of things. So that pretty much brings us to an end. As I said, I just started my YouTube channel. I'm going to be posting videos every week about different topics in China and about sourcing products from China. That channel is just called Sourcing with Kian. I would love it if you guys could subscribe and you'll get a lot more education that way moving forward. I've also got my own Facebook group as well, Sourcing with Kian, where I just sort of answer a lot of questions in the community as well. And then my final contact details here. If you want to take a photo of this, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to work with me on a one-to-one basis, I've also got a Calendly booking website as well. So I hope to all connect with you there. It was a pleasure to chat to you guys today. And now we can basically open up for some Q&A. So thanks very much, guys. And let's get going.
Cool. Hey, thank you.
Let's
wow.
Stop share.
That was pretty amazing, I have to say. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Right. So we got some questions.
Hey, we've got a few questions for you.
Cool.
Let me go through. Okay. Phil Revit. Sorry, Phil Revit first. He's talking about the fact that the current situation has alerted countries to their possible over-reliance on China. Can you see a time when there'll be maybe a switch from China manufacturing to domestic manufacturing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I personally, I don't see that's going to happen because like there's just no other country in the world which has the infrastructure, the scale and the capacity that China can offer. Because like if you want to, you know, manufacture 10,000 of one product within 1 month, like there's just simply no other country in the world which can do that. And it's not only like the manufacturing capability, but it's also the labor force which are skilled enough to make that at the price of that labor force as well. And then not only that, but it's the infrastructure of the country of being able to basically have all these ports and ship it out on time. So I personally don't see it happening. Maybe for like more smaller customizable products, maybe that will be the case and that will happen. But if you're like a large brand and you're scaling and you're placing big orders, I don't really see anything else. But one thing I will add, right, if you're worried about the perception that China has right now, one thing you can do is on your labels, you know, you have to write legally made in China, but you can also write made in PRC, and PRC stands for People's Republic of China. And there's some really big brands which do this as well. So, and also just double check with your freight forwarder as well, because they're also in touch with customs and they check things. But you can put made in PRC instead of made in China. And in that way, you don't really get that negative thing if you're worried about it.
I found out a couple of weeks ago you don't have to put made in anywhere on a large range of products. So that was news to me as well. I thought you had to legally say where it was made.
Yeah, I'm under the impression as well that you legally have to say the source, and I think you have to do it on the product as well, but at least on all like your shipping documents and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, you have to put on the shipping documents. What I found out when I did a bit of quick research, and again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if this is the exact detail, but there are some products where you have to say it, for example, food. There are a lot of products where you're not allowed to lie about it, but you don't have to say. So you can say nothing. Mm-hmm. So there's a large number of product categories where you can just say nothing. You don't have to say where it was made at all. Mm-hmm. And that was news to me. I didn't realize that before.
Interesting.
Okay. So next question. Question from David. What's the best way to know you're dealing with a factory and not a middleman? I would like to confirm the best way to get in touch with factories.
So the quick and easy answer would be like to watch that YouTube video, because I sort of give you a step-by-step process. But the thing you can do yourself, right, is that you really have to be very, very knowledgeable about your product yourself, because if you don't understand like the materials and the components and stuff like that of your product, and you're just reaching out to people and getting prices and things like that, well, you can start to understand, like if you've been dealing with this product for a long time and you really understand the price of this product, and people are giving you prices of like $8, $8.20, $8.50, and then someone comes along with like a really low price or a really high price, well, the ones with the really high price are just like likely to be willing to add on a much higher margin for themselves, or the ones with the really low price are just doing that to capture your attention to get the product. But the more inquiries you can send and the more conversations you have with suppliers, and actually one quick thing that I would like to say is that, like, when you have that relationship on WeChat, which I mentioned, if you talk to your supplier within their business hours, which is, let's just say 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. in China, phone them out of the blue on WeChat on a video call and just see where they are. Just see if they're in their office, which they should be, and then just say, hey, by the way, do you mind just showing me the factory real quick? Can you just go down to the factory and just show me, like, you know, your production line? Like, oh, actually, you know, we're not in the factory right now, but you can see their background, you can see their surroundings, and then they're like, okay, maybe they weren't in the factory. Well, then do it again out of the blue, like 1 week later. And if you consistently see that they're not in a factory and they're saying that they are a factory, well, then they aren't really a factory. So I would just use WeChat in that regard.
Okay, great. Then we've got a couple of questions from Sanaz and Ginny about the virtual Canton fair. Is there a cost to attending it, and how do they find out how to access the virtual fair?
So no, it should be free. The fair is always free for the buyers. And if you've attended a Canton fair before, you will have a badge, and it'll just be your badge number, and you use that to register online. But if you've never attended before, you can still register on their website, and you have to be very careful with the website here, because there's it's not like the most modern website, and there's loads of other websites as well trying to like impersonate to be the Canton Fair website as well. So I'm gonna be posting that website and making a video on it. I don't know the website off the top of my head, but it's something like cantonfair.org or something like that. And there's a process of like applying for the badge. But either on my YouTube channel or on the Facebook group, I'll keep you right in that process. Okay. And it starts on the 15th of June. So I'm guessing by like maybe the 5th of June, all those details will be available.
Yeah, I don't think they've published yet how to log into the virtual fair yet, have they?
No, they've not released that information yet, but I imagine it'll be within the next like 5 to 10 days.
Yeah. Just to come back to David, actually, on how we make sure that whether we're working with a factory or a middleman. Just to add, we do work through a middleman on one of our products, and the reason is because it's made out of 3 different materials put together into original product. And if I went to a factory, so the wood part would be made by a wood factory, but the plastic part needs to be made by a plastic factory. So actually, I've had to go to a middleman, in this case, a very large distributor, and they've put the product together for me by going to these other factories. And in fact, they went so far as to pay for the molds that I needed for the plastic stuff. And I have a really great long-term relationship with them. So it isn't always the case. And we've visited both factories with them. So when we've been in China, you know, they're very open about who they are. I'm very open about who I am. And they, you know, will take us to the factory and they will accompany us. And actually, the factory doesn't have an export license. So we have to do it through this other firm. But that's how they get the cheapest pricing for us, because they get China-based pricing. They add a bit of markup, obviously, that I need to accept, but then they are the export business that I can deal with. So like Kian said, you have to go and see people and look them in the whites of the eyes sometimes, but also don't make it a negative. Sometimes it's a positive. Now, if I wanted the cheapest possible wood factory, well, actually, they've taken me to the area. I know where it is. I know that there's a ton of other factories in that same neighborhood. I could probably go and find my own one now and exclude them from any deal that I was going to do. Okay, cool. Sorry, I didn't mean, but I thought that would be useful.
No, absolutely. That's the ultimate way to know, is to go and visit yourself. So if you're able to go to China, that's your best way of finding out who you're dealing with. Yeah,
absolutely. And they do always give us a really lovely meal, actually. So it's quite fun. You actually do know them and get to be friends with them.
Yeah.
Okay, question from Ron. For startup online small product Amazon resellers of finished products, they haven't got a budget to visit factories. They want very small initial orders. How can they determine quality when ordering from Alibaba?
Well, it's really just by testing samples that you receive. And unfortunately, like when you are starting out and when you are small time, like, you know, you have to get started somewhere. So there's going to be like a teething process that you go through. But essentially, you want to try and educate yourself and align with the best possible manufacturer. That's why I kind of said like, align with the manufacturer which is right for your business, because like you don't necessarily want to go for the factory, like the best factory which has got 2,000 workers, because they're not going to care about your order. Because they're dealing with very, very big companies. And if you come along, you're like, hey, this is my first time, 300 pieces, I want to trial it. But if you find also the slightly smaller factories who also want to grow, they're going to offer you way more support, and they believe in your vision, and they're going to like support you with smaller orders and, you know, as good prices as they can do, because they want to grow with you and they see your growth potential. You kind of want to align with those manufacturers, and, you know, you want to basically, the most important thing is the product, right? Is to get samples which are hitting the quality standards that you require, and then using and testing those samples yourself. And as long as you're happy with the quality and you're happy with the price, and, you know, you kind of want to be asking that question of, you know, how many workers you have in your factory, because then you can sort of paint the picture of how big they are, and, you know, if they're willing to support you, you know, yes or no in the long term.
Yeah. And one of the things that we will always ask is not just how many workers, but how they hire their workers and where they get them from. And it's just a stupid, simple question that most most people who are not running a factory certainly wouldn't know how to ask, and don't expect you to ask that. And so it's just finding other ways to be a little bit more devious to get to the truth. But actually, for a mobile phone accessory, maybe you don't want a factory. Maybe what you do want is just a very large distributor or printing business even. And you wouldn't necessarily need to go to Asia for that. You might even find it sitting in the UK, frankly. So, I mean, it does depend on price and how big your orders get, but just to get started for something as small as that, you may not need to go there. But also look at somewhere like Yiwu. So Yiwu is very well known for being an all-year market that doesn't just exist around the time of the Canton Fair. And they provide this kind of smaller accessories and smaller type products, and that don't require high standards. And actually, you could probably find that kind of product from that source much more easily. And there are also specialist agents that you can, I mean, lots of Amazon sellers are using sourcing agents, but you might be able to find, I mean, I can put you in touch with a sourcing agent that specializes in finding things in the Yiwu market. And that example that you gave would be a great product to come out of Yiwu market. Would you agree with that? That's
absolutely.
And then there are other markets like the toy market in, oh, I don't remember exactly where it is because I don't do toys, but I have another friend on Amazon who does toys. And so she goes off to, you know, some other part of China regularly where they have, again, like an open type market. And it's not like a street market is in the UK. It's actually a building with shops, and basically they call it a market, but it's open all year round.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mukesh has posted the web address for the Canton Fairs, cantonfair.org.cn. I've not checked that, so hopefully that's correct. And then a question from Gurdeep Singh. How do you protect your product from being ripped off by suppliers? If they do, what can you do to deal with it? Especially in China where the legal systems are different, you say?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And there's a few different things you can do, right? The most important thing is that, like, really just like understand and analyze, like, are you bringing something to market which is really innovative? Is this something that you have to protect? Because what I've noticed is a lot of people fall in love with their first product and they treat it like their baby, but like really it's just like a slight iteration of another product that's in the market, and it's like it's not really worth protecting because it doesn't have like some pure innovation in it. But if it's something that you're like, this is my idea, I'm solving a problem, no one's ever done this product like this before, and I don't want this copied, well, the first thing I would do is protect your product in your home market, whether that means wherever you're selling it. If you're selling it in the UK or the USA, get it patent protected, get it design registered, trademark your brand, all this sort of stuff, so that you know if someone ever copies your product. Because bear in mind, it might not be your factory that copies your product. It could be a competitor that buys your product, gives it to another factory, and they don't know that it's been protected, and they go and manufacture it, and then it comes out into the market. And it's happened to me. But like, if you legally have your innovation protected in the market in which you're selling, and then someone brings that product into the marketplace, you can legally take them off sale. You can hit them with a lawyer's letter to say you are not allowed to sell this product in our market. You have to take it off sale immediately, and you can even sue them for like earnings that they've made as well. So the first thing you can do if you don't really necessarily trust your factory or trust your competition is protect it in your home market. The other thing you can do is you can get your factory to sign an NNN document, which is a non-disclosure, non-use, and non-circumvention. And if you do that, make sure that you get it written and signed in English and in Chinese with the factory's company CHOP on it as well, because then it's legally binding in China. But I say that I've never got a supplier to sign an NNN document because I'm very, very big on relationships. And when you say to a supplier, hey, manufacture my product, but I also want you to sign this document, it's like saying, I want to manufacture with you, but I also don't trust you. And that doesn't build your relationship in the right way. Whereas I just have a high trust factor with my factories, and that gives us a lot of other benefits. So, but if you've never met your factory before and you're reaching out to them for the first time and you have a product of innovation, then maybe it is worth you getting them to sign an NNN document. It just really depends on your relationship with the factory. But those are the two best things that I could suggest to protect your product.
Okay,
yeah,
fantastic.
and I would add that we always make them sign an NDA, but we also have the PO contract that has been written for us in both English and Chinese. And we make sure that both the specification is in there, but there's also a couple of penalty clauses to say that if they compete with us, there's an automatic fine of $50,000. It might not make a big difference to a big factory who really wants to compete with us, but it's there as a deterrent, and it actually engages everyone in a conversation about we're operating with integrity here. So that's just a standard approach that we've adopted. And actually, we do it with our US suppliers, we do it with our UK suppliers, and we do it with our Chinese suppliers. We don't discriminate at all.
All good. I think that's everything. Everyone has had every question they've ever had about sourcing answered. Thank you, Kian.
No, my pleasure. And hopefully when this is all over, we can do a live event together as well.
Yes, looking forward
we need to do that. This, I think you can see from the level of engagement that this has been a really interesting session, and people have got into the questions and they really want to know more about what's in your brain. I just have one last question myself. What
Sure.
are your thoughts on how you would source out of another country like Vietnam or India even?
Well, you know what's so interesting, right? Is that like China understand that they're becoming a little bit more expensive. They understand that they have this like growth in the middle class, and people have a much more higher disposable income, and then people like factories aren't the cool place to work anymore. Because like actually like the young labor force, which used to go into factories, now are going into working in like Starbucks and KFCs and Pizza Huts, because China's going through that middle class like emergence. And now they just don't have the workforce to come through. So the factories are moving more and more inland into the rural areas. And that's only sustainable for so long. And what's happened is a lot of factory bosses have realized this. And Chinese factories have gone to countries like Myanmar, and they've set up their own factories in other countries in Asia, which have a much lesser tariff cost going into the US. And they're using local workers, like Myanmar workers, and but having it operated and run by Chinese staff. So like my bag factories are doing that at the moment, and they're like, by next year we'll be fully operational in Myanmar, so you can place your orders there. And then when you go to the Canton Fair as well, sometimes you see like clothing suppliers, and it'll be a Chinese factory, Chinese company, but they'll have a sign saying factory in Bangladesh. So the Chinese are also getting wiser to what's going on around the world. So first of all, if you have a good relationship with your supplier, I would just ask them, first of all, are you considering manufacturing in other countries? And then they might point you in the right direction. But then the other thing is that like, I wouldn't feel comfortable moving my production to another country without actually going to visit myself. So I went to Vietnam last year and I went to visit all the bag factories, and I kind of just sort of saw with my own eyes what they're capable of, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are compared to China. And then if you ever did want to move your production, I would always start with a trial order, because it's not only just like, okay, can they meet my product and can they get the best price, but it's like, what are their delivery times like? What are their shipments like? You know, is the humidity in that country different? Because like I had one order where there was, it was in like their rainy season, right? And it was like really, really warm, really humid. It was in the middle of China, and they had all the windows open. And what happened was like all the condensation came into the factory, right? And what we were making bags, and then they basically finished the bag, they put it in the poly bag, they sealed the poly bag, but all that condensation got in as well. And then they sealed it in a carton and sealed it in a container. And the goods were inspected and they were fine. But when they arrived in the UK 40 days later, the bags all had mold on them, all of them, the whole container. And it was just condensation. So we were never to know that. The factory wasn't really aware of that. But that's why, like, if you go to another country, like even something like the humidity levels in that country are so important. It might not be something you would consider. So always start with a trial order. Don't just place like your next order. You would start with like, you know, 100 or 300 pieces, and just make sure like even the shipping forwarders work normally as well. And then just take it like step by step.
Yeah, you're right. Cool, good. All right, we better wrap up this session. It's been fascinating, and yes, we definitely will arrange to have you face to face and do a much deeper kind of masterclass. That would be lovely, and thank you for making the offer.
Cool.
And I'm just going to highlight what we're doing next week. So this is a regular feature. It should be in your calendars. And some of you were here a couple of weeks back or a few weeks back when we had Danny come and teach us a PPC trick or hack. Well, next week he's coming back and he's going to be talking about how to increase your listing conversion, and specifically he's going to be focusing a lot more not just on the regular stuff that we all talk about and maybe have talked about to death, but he's going to be talking about how he uses A+ content and has really raised the conversion rate that on some listings that he's worked on. And he's going to be showing us good and bad examples of that and how to really kind of master that whole part of listings. I'm always a bit obsessed with, well, I think I know everything about listings, but really, is there a trick that I need to know that I haven't already discovered? And so this will be a great session if you have that kind of question going on in the back of your mind. And if you're new at this and there's a lot you don't know, this will be an absolutely fundamental session for you to attend. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Anything else I've forgotten to say, Christian, because he's like my guardian?
That's all good. I think we're all good. I think that's a wrap.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, thank you, everyone. Goodbye. And
thank you for joining us, and thank you to Kian for speaking.
Cool. Thanks very much for having me. Thanks for hosting me. It was a pleasure. And anytime you need me, just give me a shout. Happy to jump on again and go in more detail.
Super. Excellent. All right.
Thanks,
ciao. Bye.
All right. Take care, guys.